The world ended for Daniel Hale at exactly 2:17 p.m. on a quiet spring afternoon. The explosion tore through the air like a scream that never stopped. One moment the base was alive with the hum of conversation, the clatter of tools, the laughter of men who had learned to joke in the face of danger. And the next, it was fire. The kind that burns through everything, metal, air, memory. When the blast hit, Daniel didn't feel pain. Just light, a blinding white flash followed by silence so deep it felt like the world had been muted. When he opened his eyes, the sky was full of ash and smoke. He stood there, disoriented, his uniform torn, his ears ringing. Around him, twisted steel groaned under invisible weight. The barracks, the vehicles, the laughter, and all gone. And somehow, impossibly, he was standing. Not a bruise, not a burn, not even a cut. He stumbled forward, numb, calling out names that vanished into the wind. The men who had eaten beside him an hour ago were gone. The commander who joked about heading home next week, gone. The medic who always hummed under her breath when she worked, gone. Only silence answered back, thick and cruel. That day became the line that split his life into before and after. In the weeks that followed, the world called him a miracle. Reporters wrote stories about the man who walked out of the blast untouched. Medical experts studied him, tested him, scanned him, looking for reasons why his body carried not a single scar. But none of them saw what the cameras couldn't. That inside, Daniel was shattered beyond recognition. He couldn't remember much of the explosion itself, only the sounds that followed. The distant wailing alarms, the soft crackle of fires still burning, the faint sound of boots that would never move again. At night, those echoes came back. In the quiet, they filled his dreams until he couldn't tell if he was asleep or still there. He left the hospital within days, walking out with clean skin and haunted eyes. The world expected him to be grateful, to tell his story, to smile on television, to say words like faith and destiny. But Daniel couldn't bring himself to speak. Because deep down he didn't feel like a survivor. He felt like a thief, someone who had stolen life while everyone else had been forced to pay the price. Days turned to months. He wandered from town to town, trying to lose himself in movement. He found small work, repairing fences, cleaning empty buildings, fixing what was broken even as he couldn't fix himself. Everywhere he went, people looked at him with a strange mix of awe and pity. "You're the one from the explosion," they would whisper, and Daniel would nod and walk away. He didn't want to be known for surviving. He wanted to be known for why. He began visiting the families of those who had been lost. It was something inside him, a pull he couldn't ignore. The first visit nearly broke him. He stood at the doorstep of his friend Mason's home, the same Mason who used to steal coffee rations and call it morale support. Mason's wife opened the door, holding a photo of her husband in uniform. When Daniel introduced himself, her eyes softened with tears she'd been holding too long. She didn't blame him. She didn't ask the questions he feared. She just said, "He always said you'd take care of them." That night, Daniel sat outside under the stars, staring up at the same sky that had watched the explosion. He realized something that changed the way he saw everything. Survival wasn't a burden to carry. It was a debt to repay. He started small. He began volunteering at a rehabilitation center for veterans. At first, he barely spoke, just helped with repairs, ran errands, cleaned equipment. But slowly, his silence became something more. One day, a young soldier with bandaged legs asked him how he kept going. Daniel didn't have an answer at first. Then he said softly, "Because they can't, so I have to." Those 5 words became his way of living. Every year after that, Daniel visited the site of the explosion. The government had rebuilt the base, but he still walked to the far edge, where a small plaque stood under a tree, engraved with the names of every man and woman who hadn't made it home. He would trace each name with his fingertips, close his eyes, and promise to keep going, for all of them. But even as years passed, part of him stayed in that moment, standing amid the ruins, covered in dust, wondering why fate had chosen him. It took him nearly a decade to realize the truth. Maybe he hadn't been spared because he was special, but because someone had to carry the memory. Someone had to live in a way that honored what was lost. So he built his life around remembrance. He spoke to schools, sharing the importance of service and sacrifice. He started a foundation for families who had lost loved ones in uniform. And he never once told the story for fame. He told it because in every word, there lived the voices of those who never got to speak again. By the time Daniel grew older, the nightmares had softened into memories. He learned to smile again, not because he forgot, but because he finally understood. He wasn't the man who walked out of an explosion without a scratch. He was the man who walked back into life carrying the invisible scars of everyone who couldn't. And in that quiet strength, there was healing, not for the world, but for him. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of courage, loss, and the quiet kind of strength that keeps people moving forward, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Legends Off History. Every story you support helps us honor the voices that time should never silence. Special request: tell us in the comments, what does survival mean to you?